Sport in Wales podcast.
Supported by DragonBet.
Your go-to for Welsh sports news and views.
Hello and welcome to the Sport in Wales podcast with me, Geraint Hardy, sponsored by DragonBet. Sport in Wales is co-founded by Gareth Anscombe and Alice Cuthbert, and you can find our Sport in Wales magazine in various gyms, leisure centres and other places right across Wales and of course online. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Now, this week on the podcast, it's a Cheltenham races special because it's Cheltenham races next week. And we're delighted to say that we've got James Lovell from DragonBet with us. We've got horse trainer extraordinaire Tim Vaughan and jockey Lorcan Williams in the studio as well. A warm welcome to you all. But quickly, it is James's birthday, Lorcan and Tim, okay? So is there any initiation they should be worried about? If he was a jockey, Lorcan, would he have to do anything?
I'd have plenty of stick in the weighing room, I'd say. But there isn't really any initiation to come to mind anyhow. Okay,
he's safe. Tim, do anything in your stable?
I'd be buried in a water trough with us. There's no, certainly, especially as a 40th birthday, we'd probably dunk him under as well.
Happy birthday, James.
Yeah, cheers.
We have organised outside something for you to be dunked under, so Lorcan, you can do that later on, okay? I'm only joking, James. Tim, we'll go to you first because you're live from a race today with us. So where are you today?
Yeah, I'm at Plumpton, actually. I've got 4 runners down here today. Old Painless now in the 250. Then we've got Artistic Endeavour, Classic Lord and Cap Chidley. So, sorry I couldn't join you live in the studio, but obviously work calls.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, it's cards on the table time for me, I suppose. It's I'm coming at this from kind of a casual horse racing fan. I'm not an expert like yourselves, but I think it's an opportunity for us to kind of learn more as we approach Cheltenham. But Tim, your story is quite amazing, really, because you were a chartered surveyor and now you're doing this full time and kind of breeding some fantastic horses.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so basically, my parents always told me as a youngster, I'm not a traditional sort of trainer who's come through a family background, a family farm and things. My parents own a sort of car repair garage and things, and they said, go and do a proper job, so to speak, and have nothing to do with horses. And that's why I went to university, got qualified as a surveyor, and that was all going rather well, really. And but I just had the passion for the horses and the training. I loved it. I started in the amateur ranks, point-to-point riding, then point-to-point training, which is an amateur sort of sport, and it just evolved from there, really. And it took off, and we were fortunate. We had a couple of winners early doors, and a couple of owners joined us, and it just developed from there. And now I went full time in July 2008, and been at it ever since.
So the first horse. That horse has got to be kind of a special horse for you.
Yeah, it certainly was. It really, really was. It was a horse called Raboa Star, and I bought it for 1,000 guineas out of Doncaster sales. And anyway, I owned it myself, trained it, and won a race, and that's what started it all off. A chap called Andrew Lowry, actually, who's got Old Painless in the next that said to me he knew the trainer it came from, and said some mad Welshman had bought it and he'll never ever win a race. And we won a race with it. He rang me and said, would I like to train a fool for him? And that was the start of how I got going, actually.
And Lorcan and James, you can pitch in on this, but Tim just said a mad Welshman bought the horse. So are your methods different to other kind of trainers?
He's definitely nuts. I can vouch for that. And if he has a winner, it's Chinese. Whenever the Chinese takeaway's busy, that's a celebration normally.
No, are your methods different then, or is that just kind of the horse wasn't any good?
No, I think, exactly that. Different environments. So certain horses will thrive under different conditions. I think when I was starting, it was a long time ago now, that was back in sort of 2005, and the industry was totally different. My mind is a very sort of inquisitive mind, and I always want to know the answers why and why things work. And I think the industry sort of always went on gut feeling, but I was very scientific with my approach. I worked them very hard, got them as fit as I could, and I placed them in the worst or the lowest grade race I could to give them the best chance of winning. And I wasn't sort of too precious about where I placed them. I would travel as far as anyone else would travel. I'd run them in a lowest grade race, and then once a horse got confidence, then they tended to thrive for that. It's almost getting them in a winning mindset, no different to a human athlete or a rugby football team and the like. And I took that sort of approach, which I think at the time was quite unique. He was very sort of traditional sort of sport, and other than Martin Pipe, I suppose, really, who sort of revolutionised things. And then I think it went steady for a few years, and I came along and just attacked everything completely differently. And I was very aggressive in my approach, and that's it definitely helped me get going in this industry. Really give me an edge that other people weren't thinking about. And we probably got to run on a lot of trainers for 4 or 5 years, which enabled me to build up my team, and more owners join me.
And you mentioned earlier 1,000 guineas. What is that in pounds?
So basically a guinea is it's either 5 or 6 pence. I'm trying to think actually. A guinea is a pound is equivalent to £1.06. All that is so they say that rather than saying it's £1,000 plus a 5% or 6% commission fee for the auctioneers. It's a traditional thing that's happened over years and years, well, hundreds of years. But it's always stuck in horse racing. When you buy any horse through the sale, you usually buy it in guineas, and that's effectively the commission the auctioneer charges on the purchase. It's the exchange rate, for want of a better word.
Yeah. And from that 1,000 guineas first horse, Raboa Star, you said,
that's right.
Some serious success came. I've heard stories here of Manchester United players becoming clients, Alex Ferguson becoming a client. Talk us through, you've got the floor. Tell us what happened.
I love having the floor. I'm well at home having the floor. But you're talking my language. No, what happened then is Andrew Lowry, as his head optimum race, he got me going. He bought 1 or 2, and funnily enough, then James's dad, John, came on the scene, and he was my first sort of owner. Said, right, you can have a few quid, go and buy a horse, and we did for him. And again, this was all in the point-to-point world. We started then under rules, and I had a sort of 10 point-to-pointers. I started running them in national hunt races, and I was exploiting sort of the race programming structure, is for want of another word. And anyway, cut a long story short, we had a lovely winner one day at Newbury, and I was interviewed by Lydia Hislop after the race, and I sort of saying I bought a new yard and I want to expand, I want to grow. And next thing you know, the phone literally didn't stop for months and months and months. We went from sort of 30, 40 horses up to about 160 in the space of 18 months. We just couldn't build barns big enough. And I was quite aggressive in my buying sort of approach. And one day an agent rang me, said, I've got a horse for you. Do you fancy it? And I looked up his form, and it looked, absolutely made for me. It looked a little bit quirky, and I thought a change of scenery would work. I rang the agent back, said, yeah, when can I go and collect it? Where do you want the money sent? And anyway, it took about 48 hours, and he rang me back. I said, look, we've got a bit of a problem. He said, the horse is owned by Michael Owen, and he's told me he wants to speak to you. I said, what do you want to speak to me for? So anyway, he called me later that day, and I said, Michael, how are you? And he said to me, he said, well, I got a bit of an issue, really. He said, I paid 70 grand for the stud fee on that horse you want to buy off me for 5 grand. And he said, I can guarantee, he said, I've never won a race with it. You're going to bloody have it down in South Wales and go and win a ton of races with it. So I said, well, that's the idea. That's why I'm buying it. I said, that's the game I'm in. And he said to me, look, that doesn't sound so clever to me. He said, would you train it for me instead of buying it off me? I said, Jesus, Mike. I said, I'd love to. I said, would you like to, do you want me to send the lorry up to collect it, or do you want to send it down? So he obviously has his own racing yard up in Manor House in Cheshire as well. And he said, don't worry, we'll send it down. So I said, Michael, how many does your lorry take? Is it a 2? And he said, what do you mean? I said, have you got a 2-box or a 4-box? And he said, it's a 4-box as it happens. I said, great job. I said, you just well fill up the lorry. I said, I got plenty of space for horses for you. And that's literally the first conversation ever. And he said, you cheeky Welsh Jeff. And it went from there. So he actually texted me an hour late, and he said, I got 3 on the way to you. I couldn't quite fill it with a 4th. And he's had horses with me ever since, and we've had some great days. And he actually, that horse did go on, and it won first time out of Southall. And I always remember it. It was quite a big thing in the press at the time. Vaughan as runners for my footballer and all this jazz. And he turned up by a helicopter. So there was no pressure on me. But anyway, I'm in the paddock with him, and he said, what do you think? I said, I think he'll win on a bridle, Mike. It's a certainty. And he said, well, I hope so. He said, I've had a few quid on. He said, but usually he doesn't like to start. He said, if we jump off at the start, I'd be delighted. And it didn't fill me full of confidence, because that's not something I'd anticipated throughout the race, really. But the horse went on and won, and we've had plenty of success, and away we went from there.
That's fantastic, isn't it?
The interesting thing, Tim's always had kind of a crossover with the sporting world. I think you had Gatlin down there, didn't you, when you were talking about training horses and the kind of difference between how you train people and horses and all the rest of it?
Yeah, been quite fortunate like that. In that, I think there's the natural interest from the sports. We've had loads. Malky Mackay come down with the footballing bunch. Then Warren Gatlin and the team. Alan Phillips, who does all the organising for them. They've all been down. We've had horses for Simon Easterby, Stephen Jones. When I got going, actually, Stephen and Simon Easterby, they had a cracking horse for me, Ski Sunday, and we actually went to the festival with that. It was beaten 2 lengths in Fred Winter. It was second there for them, and we've had plenty of sporting boys through the yard, and they come down to train on the gallops a few times as well, because we got like a deep sand gallop and an uphill gallop, and they love it. All the footballers and rugby players often come down to have a little go, and we cross ideas on what we do, what they do. It's quite fascinating, really.
In football, Tim, when the chairman interferes with the team, does that happen? How do you stop that happening? If Michael Owen wants to say something, can you put your foot down on him?
To be fair, he's a darling to train for. He's very, very level-headed. He understands it. That's the one thing he sort of gets the game. He understands horses. It's a bit like the footballing job. You start with lots of footballers. That's why you have a squad and you end up with 11 in it rather than he understands injuries, fitness problems, and he just lets me get on with it. He's never ever said a word to me. He just says, look, just place it as best you can to give it the best chance of winning, and that's what we've done. It's not always the case, I must confess. Plenty of owners do want an involvement, or they go with their family for a day out and it works them to go one place or t'other. But on the whole, most of them these days now, they've been with me a long time. We trust each other. I work with them, they work with me, and it's quite harmonious now.
Over the years, has what you're looking for in a horse changed then? Because if you started Raboa Star and where that horse was, and you knew you had to whip it into shape, has it changed, or can your training method stayed the same?
No, massively different, actually. It's all changed. The type of horse that you can buy, what I was exploiting sort of 10, 15 years ago, you tended to have lower grade races, you could travel further, and lots of trainers didn't want to go to Scotland or Fakenham or Plumpton and the like, but with me I would go anyway. Now the whole race planning system has changed. So for example, 10 years ago, you could have a 0 to 100 chase and it'd be 3 races within 3 days. You enter all 3, you pick the weakest and you pounce. Now, all of a sudden, it's almost like a computerized package where they spread all the races out, so all the trainers have to go all around the country. And it's harder to buy those less exposed horses, so to speak. And lots of trainers now, they're doing a great job. It's far more competitive. Everyone understands the science. Everyone's tracheel, what we call tracheel washing a horse to assess the quality of their lungs before they run. Everyone's blood testing them and analysing them in far, far greater detail than they ever did sort of 15 years ago. So the game has caught up. It's really quite, it's very little edge in the sport now. The only edge you've got is having a faster horse than someone else and a bit, having them healthy on the day. But it boils down to most people are doing the job right now.
How much banter is there around between the Irish, the English and the Welsh? Do the Scots get involved as well?
To be fair, it's in racing, I think, again, well, probably the same in any sport, but in racing, I can speak as for facts. Really, it's so competitive that everyone's just happy. We all want to stay in one piece. We all want to stay thriving and doing our job. And as long as you're having your share of the winners, that's all anyone can ask for. But the Irish now are completely dominating the racing industry in Britain and at the big festivals. But it is what it is. Everything's cyclical. 10, 15 years ago, Paul Nicholls was the main man. Before that, it was Martin Pipe. Now it's the Irish who are sort of leading everything. So it's just the way it is.
Yeah. And 2 last questions. One, you must really miss your quantity surveyor days, yeah?
Yeah, you could say that. Look, I think back when it's absolutely piddling down with rain or frozen and I got 20 members of staff asking me various questions and headaches. I sometimes think life would have been a lot easier if I stayed on that route. But look, yes, you get the lows with the racing, but you get some tremendous occasions. I love it. We won Grade 1 races, we've won Scottish Grand Nationals. It's a feeling you can't replicate. It's an immense buzz, and I just love it. And the big thing for me is delivering, and the owners just getting so excited, and you're part of a team. I love it.
Yeah. Is there one kind of prouder moment than others, or are they all kind of special for certain other reasons?
I think if you ask me, standout winners, it would definitely be my first ever Grade 1 winner. That's the pinnacle of the sport, winning a Grade 1. That was at the Aintree Festival with a horse called Saint R. I think that was, just tremendous occasion. But 8 days later, we had another Grade 1 winner in Ireland, and then we had the Scottish Grand National winner. Now, to win any Grand National gives you an immense feeling. But your goals change as you go along. I take you back to James in the studio with you. We had a winner of the Dunraven Bowl. It's a race their dad always wanted to win, and with a horse called Master Charm. And the day that won, I couldn't have got a better feeling in the world. The day I had my first Point winner, the day I had my first National Hunt winner. It's they're all moments that stand out. It's so hard. It's a competitive old gig, and when you have them, you've got to enjoy them.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. So, like one of the major horses, if you win a Grand National. And these guys at the studio might say to me differently, or have a different opinion to you. What does that, if I haven't got the money, but if I wanted to go and buy that horse, what's it going to cost me?
Too much.
That's the problem. That's the problem. You can't go and buy a Grand National winner. There's only one Grand National every year, and only one winner every year. So 18,000 horses in training. How do you buy that winner? It's almost impossible.
Howick.
Sorry?
So there's a horse that's well up in the betting for the Gold Cup. Howick. I think he cost 500 quid, didn't he?
800
Oh,
quid,
sorry, yeah. So he,
wow.
so he.
There are the odd flukes.
800 euros actually. Yeah, 800 euros. I thought you were on about a Welsh point then. It by Chepstow for a moment, James. No, Howick. He was bought for 800 euros in Ireland as a yearling, and he's gone on to win a King George, and he's high up in the bet for the Gold Cup and Grand National. Some amazing stories. So it can be done, but more often than not, it's all about the numbers. You need to go through high quality, well-bred animals who are bred to stay that sort of distance. So genetically, they've got half a chance. There's plenty of freaks in the sport, but you need to buy a good pedigree, and then you just keep doing it until you land on the right one. And more often than not, those type of horses end up in the similar yards because those big yards tend to be able to buy more frequently.
Yeah, because you're on the other end of the spectrum. You have I ride Colwell Potter out every day, who's just been bought for 740,000 by Jed Mason, Sir Alex Ferguson. So then you've got Hewitt, who's 800.
Hang on, I'm parking Tim for a minute. Are you going to meet Alex Ferguson then because of that? Loken?
I've met him a couple of times. I rode for him in the Grade 1 at Aintree in the Melon Chase on Hitman. I think my third ride for Paul Nicholls was actually for Sir Alex Ferguson on a horse called Rouge Devils. So I've met him a couple of times. My mother's met him as well. So
that's cool, isn't it?
It is pretty cool. Yeah, all my mates back home couldn't believe it. So
does he give you like a team talk, like he would have done to the
I'd say
footballers?
he's calmed down since his younger days, maybe. Yeah. But I think for them, people, they're just there to enjoy the day out, aren't they? So I'm probably I get the good side of him anyhow.
Yeah, no boots in the eye like David Beckham got or anything like that.
No, definitely
Scared of giving it a bad ride, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Tim, I know you've got a dash, so just quickly, we'll get it from the boys later on in the pod, but have you got a Cheltenham tip for our listeners to kind of have a think about and ponder this week?
Well, I thought Facto File over in Ireland, he won. He was only a two-runner race last time, but by God, he was impressive that day. And, the timing of the race, he looks a very nice horse. I think he runs in the Brown Advisory 3-miler. Tishan Lorcan may be able to tell you a great deal more on him, but I thought he was very, very impressive. And I think he'll have an entry, as far as I'm told, in the champion bumper. I remember tipping a horse up last year called Captain Teague of Paul Nichols's, who a friend of mine, Tom Malone, had bought the horse. It won a sort of fairly low grade bumper, and anyway, they were raving about it to me, and that was 40-1 shot, and that went in. James, you might recall the night I told everyone about that horse, and Sean Bowen was abusing me, saying I had no chance.
Well, you're never wrong, you, Tim.
Not on this occasion, I wasn't. But lads, it's been great to join you.
Yeah, thank you so much. All the best today, and all the best for everything in the future. Thanks for your time, Tim.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
There we go. We've had some notes to write down there already. Then, in terms of bets for Cheltenham.
Nah, he's wrong about Tishan.
Yeah, go on. Tell us why then.
No, Paul has another horse in there called Quebecois. Who's Tishan's got quite a bit of hype about him because he won first time out in a point very impressively, and he was bought for quite a bit of money by one of Paul's biggest owners called Johnny Delahaye and Sam Delahaye. And yeah, he's got quite a bit of hype about him, but there's another horse called Quebecois who won in just as good style, who's just got a lesser profile probably. So,
and you might be riding him, look.
Yeah, I might be riding him in the Champion Bumper. So hopefully he'll be all right. We'll see.
So when will you find out then that you are riding that horse or not?
So you have a thing called declarations, where the trainers decide to declare their horses who actually run for the race. So that's 2 days before. And then I have an agent called Ian Popham, who's a good friend of mine. He used to ride actually, and he rode for Paul Nicholls as well. And he basically just calls up the trainer and just says, look, Lorcan's available. Do you want him to ride this horse or so forth? So, look, nothing's set in stand yet, but I race course galloped him, which is just sort of type of training, last week at Kempton, and he went really well. So, yeah, fingers crossed.
So you've got a bond with the horse, so it makes sense for you to ride it again?
Yeah, well, hopefully, yeah. Yeah, no, I know him pretty well, and a good mate of mine rides him out every day. So
it's really important for jockeys, as far as I understand, to get to know horses. So Lorcan to be exercising him in the morning, you'll know when the horse is feeling right, what to do with the horse. So quite often the guys who ride him a lot get the rides on the day.
That's not always the case though, because you could just ride a horse that you have kind of never met, I suppose, is the way to put it.
Yeah, no, it is quite bizarre. And on about Cheltenham, like I've ridden the festival quite fortunate quite a few times. And yeah, sat on horses I've never ridden before for like Tom George and people like that. So yeah, I guess for us it's quite normal, but we're paid to do a profession, and as long as we do the research on the horse, then it's not too different really.
What do you mean by research? What will you do to prepare for that horse then?
So basically every horse is different. They've obviously all got a personality, but they've also got traits. Some horses are fast, some horses are slow. But meaning they're fast or slow isn't a bad thing. It's just the tactics during the race.
Right. Okay.
So a horse that's probably a little bit slower probably wants to be further forward in the pack, whereas a horse that's probably faster, you could sit off and save a bit of energy and use his pace towards the end of a race. So that's sort of, and it's also the jumping aspect. Some horses make mistakes, some horses don't. Some horses are more enthusiastic during a race, so they're more stronger. And some horses are, as they say, behind the bridle, which is they need a little bit more encouragement. So we'll just watch replays of previous races and do our studying and see what we think will happen, and then we get instructions on the day.
The best jockeys would be the best tacticians, perhaps?
Yeah.
So to be a good jockey, you have to have, well, on the flat, they say you have to have a clock in your head. You need to know how fast the race is going, whether your horse has got that finishing power and he's got out in front and stretch the stamina of the other ones. So a good jockey will do his research. He'll know how what kind of pace of the race suits the horse, and they'll ride it accordingly.
So when you hear people say, or if you've been studying the form, people who have a bet or whatever, is that what they are studying? The kind of the tactics that horses and the jockeys have been riding on a certain horse? Yeah,
no, definitely. And sometimes things don't always go to plan, so they'll probably have a look at a race they previously run in, and they thought, oh, he got stuck in traffic there, or he made a bad mistake of that obstacle, he probably could have won there. So maybe for people who are putting a bet on, probably look at that and see that he might have a chance this day. And it's all seeing which race is hotter and which race is better. And it's probably thinking about, there's probably more that goes into it, I guess. As you get older, it's just the natural thing to do, really.
Yeah. And so how did you get started then, Lorcan? How was it where did you kind of first jump on a horse and then realise, oh, do you know what, I'm quite good at this?
Well, it's probably I had a lot of people say this, but I could ride before I could walk, really. My mother and my father were big into horses, not actually racing. They had horses when they were youngsters. And then I suppose I grew up on a farm, and I was around horses all my life, and I started pony racing, which I was amongst the likes of James Byrne, Sean Byrne, John Joe Neal, Megan Nichols, and etc. I could go on and on and on to write a list. And it sort of grew from there then. And I was lucky enough, my mother and father were very supportive, took me everywhere. And then I done a thing called an advanced camp at Newmarket Racing School. And I won an award there, which was a week's work experience at Paul Nichols's, and went down there for a week and really enjoyed it. And then Paul asked me to come back during the summer. And I went back during the summer and left school early and never went back. And I've been there ever since. I've been there for 9 years now.
Wow. So how old were you when you first kind of went there for that summer?
I was around 14, 15.
Yeah.
So, I just enjoyed horses, really. I just love horses, and it was just my passion. And I never really thought of I used to walk around the yard and during breakfast, when you're young, you don't want to be in the breakfast room with other people because it's a bit intimidating because you're young. And I used to walk around the yard, and it was sort of the feeling of what would it like to be riding for Paul Nicholls, never mind riding a winner. And then it's sort of grown from there that you have competitive nature then.
Yeah, because that's where is that where you are? That you're in Paul Nicholls' stable. We've heard him be mentioned quite a few times in the pod already. So you're there week in, week out, yeah?
Sorry, yeah. So basically, I've been with Paul since I was 15. Like I said, went there, and then I've been employed since I was 15, and I started being there every day, exercising the horses, and I was an amateur. I started off as an amateur, and basically, my first year I was doing point to point, and I was riding probably slow horses, which is hard to say, and average horses. And to be honest, my first season I didn't have any success, and I didn't actually enjoy it. And I thought, bloody hell, what
am I doing? I left school for this.
Left school for this. I'm going to go back to rugby or go back to doing the farm. And my mother and father said, no, stick at it. And then I was quite fortunate enough that Robert and Sally Olner, who were very successful in the racing, were doing had their own pointers and picked up on my name and asked me to ride their horses. And it was really fortunate then that their horses were very good. And yeah, I gained, I had a lot of winners the next season, ended up being champion amateur, and it grew from there really. And I was just quite fortunate. And Paul then all of a sudden just said, look, you're going for your conditional jockey course, which is leading to being a professional. And stem from there, and I've never looked back really.
So what does a normal week look for you then like? If you got a race on the weekend, what does like Monday to Friday in preparation look like for you?
So as I was saying earlier, with declarations and stuff like that, the horses get declared. So your week really starts on a Sunday because you can see what's going on through the week. And usually for me, I'm quite quiet through the week, apart from your Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays. So from Monday morning, I'd probably get up around 6 o'clock. I say 6 o'clock. That's if I get up. I'm horrendous in the morning.
Okay, fair enough.
So around 6 o'clock, and then I go into Paul's, and they do the board. So the board is where they have all the employers' names down, and they sort all the horses that are being ridden out, who's riding them, and people have set horses most of the time every day because they suit that horse day to day. So I go in, they organise that, and then I do a full morning at Paul's, which is from 6:30 to 1 o'clock, and I exercise all the horses. So that's normally my day to day, and then I go and do some exercise after. I go running and stuff like that, just to look after my weight. So, but if I'm racing then, which is usually on a Friday and Saturday, I'd still get up and go and exercise a horse if I can and had time before I could go. And I'd get to the races, run the track, have a look at the conditions, see if there's any obstacles moved or anything like that, study the form then before the race, and try and ride a winner.
It's hard work as well.
I think being a jockey is the hardest. I don't know about ultramarathons and stuff, but it is one of the hardest sports to keep going at, to have longevity. These guys work their absolute socks off. And if you're a journeyman jockey, so Lorcan's obviously attached to a big stable and he's had huge success. But if you're a kind of run-of-the-mill guy, you are working your nuts off. You're driving somewhere in the darkness and the cold to ride out horses in the morning, hoping that someone might put you on a slow horse that's riding up in Kelso or...
So that's like a trial then, that workout there.
Yes, they help.
Yeah.
You've got to try and get in with the owners, get in with the stable. So you'll try and help around the yard in the morning, then hope that you might be put on a horse that's going to run somewhere that might have no chance, but you're driving all the way up to the north of Scotland to get one ride, paid not a lot of money and literally risking your life. And the whole time you're bloody starving as well. I know what I'm like when I'm hangry. It's a really, really tough life. I mean, there was an old story that Tony McCoy for a snack used to just have a sachet of mayonnaise, didn't he? That's all he'd have during the day, just a sachet of mayonnaise to keep him going.
So what weight are you having to kind of stay within to be considered to ride?
So I tried to stay between sort of 10 stone 10 and 11 stone, which is fine when you're racing every day, because your day is so busy. You don't really think about eating. You just try and keep hydrated more than anything. Yeah, and then you have a little bit of dinner because it's sort of just fasting the whole time then. But yeah, I try to stay around that region, which is a little bit difficult for me. My family's quite big.
You're quite tall as well for a jockey.
Yeah. So I'd probably be in the top 3 heaviest in the weighing room of jockeys. Which, look, it's one of those things. I don't see it as a disadvantage at all. It's just one of those things. But yeah, lucky enough, I've been able to. So you start off with a claim, and you basically have £7 claim. So that's what's intriguing for people to start using you. You start off with a £7 claim to take off a weight. So say a horse normally has 11 stone in a race. The less weight they have, probably the more chance they have of winning. So say a horse has 11 stone. When you're really young, you start off with a £7 claim. And that £7 claim decreases the more winners you ride. So I think it's like, is it 20? If you ride 20 winners, you go down to £5 claim. And if you ride another 20, you go down to 3, then you've got to ride 25 winners and you're fully fledged professional. Yeah. So that's how you get intrigued to using people. Then you can build your contacts and with people and associations and stuff like that. So it's a bit confusing and it's hard to explain, but...
There's a lot of jargon with racing, for us. It's just horses running around the field, isn't it? But it's a very complicated sport when you kind of listen to the different claims, weights, even gambling. You're talking about different odds. So when I have a 500 quid bet, I talk about a monkey. People look at me like, what the F&L's a monkey? But it's a complicated sport, but it shouldn't be really. But what Lorcan was talking about earlier, he said about point to points. I always think the point to points and pony racing, he was a pony racing champion. That is such a strength of Welsh racing. Welsh racing does so well. And it's not like England where they're well financed. Like these English yards are probably kind of come through old money and the old landed gentry and their family had land. Welsh racing does really, really well, and it's purely down to hard work. These guys work their absolute nuts off. I mean, Tim didn't come from a wealthy background. Evan Williams, Christian Williams, all these guys who are at the top of their game. They are like Champions League guys, and they all do it without the money that England's got. And I think it's because of the point to points and the grassroots we have in Wales, the kind of amateur scene, and they can competing against each other that really brings them all on. I mean, we got Sean Bowen, who's second to Harry Cobden, the Jockey Championship at the moment. So who do you want to win there, by the way? Harry or Sean? Split loyalties, the Welshman or your teammate?
He can't ask him that.
I got to ask him.
It's pretty difficult. To be honest, I'd like to see Sean win it this year, even though I think it's a little bit doubtful, unfortunate, if he's saying. I would love to see Sean win it just because I think Harry Cobden's got more chance of winning it again than Sean. Sean's had to work very hard. Not saying Harry hasn't, but Sean's worked very, very hard to be where he's
and financially then, like you're paid a wage, right, to be with Paul Nicholls. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
To a certain extent?
Yeah.
So some jockeys won't be paid a wage and they'll just be trying to find a gig, find a horse.
Yeah, so basically you get £220 every ride you have off of a horse. So you get £220, but obviously if you don't have any rides on the day, some journeyman jockey might not get paid, even if they go in and exercise the horses, because they don't have that sort of. It's like employment for me, really. Yeah. But it's just that I've been with Paul for such a long time that I've go in there and exercise the horses, and thank God he pays me. So I have a set wage every fortnight off of him. But if I go, like say I went to Doncaster yesterday, I rode one in the first and one in the last, so I get paid £220 for each of them, and then I get 10% of prize money of whatever they earn. So it wasn't a bad day yesterday, even though it didn't go to plan. But
where did you place yesterday? Sorry.
So I was on the favourite in the first, but that was the horse ended up falling, unfortunately.
Okay.
And then I rode a horse in the last, which was a bumper, and finished third. And then one of my mates beat me, so it's not too bad.
Bones have you broke, Log?
Touch wood. I'm lucky. I'm one of the
Have
lucky
you never
ones.
broken any?
No.
That is incredible for a jockey.
Well, there's some massive falls sometimes, and obviously horses lose their lives as well, which is really sad. But like, it looks intense as well. Is it knackering riding a horse?
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of adrenaline that goes through your body, and it is an extreme sport. I mean, there's not many sports who have an ambulance and a vet traveling behind you at 35 mile an hour. So, it is an extreme sport. But yeah, it can get knackering. It's the horses, they're 500 kg of muscle, and you're trying to control them, and they've got their own mind. There's two minds in the sport. So I could be thinking one thing, he could be thinking another. So there's a lot behind it.
Yeah, you've got to know the animal, or be able to control the animal, that's for sure. How do you decide? I've always wanted to know this since I was a little kid, and I don't know the answer. How do you decide like what colours you wear? Is that your colour, Logan, or is it like a sable colour?
No,
or how does it work?
so basically that's the owner.
Oh, okay.
So whoever, so for instance, I rode for an owner that I usually ride for. So he has red and white colours. So it's just down to them, and what they do is they buy their own colours. Oh no, there's Derek Coles. Derek Coles, his name is. He's a great bloke. He owns horses with Paul and John Joe O'Neill and Jeremy Scott. So his colours are just red and white. But Alec Ferguson's are all red, and he has white stars down the sleeve.
Okay.
So, but he's always in with his mate Jed Mason, who's actually my sponsor, and they have the white and then blue over the shoulder and red on the arms. So I really enjoy riding in them, really.
So you say a sponsor, that's another thing in the mix. So did they help you with kind of finance and stuff as well?
Yeah, so that is something I'm very fortunate with as well. Jed is very generous, and he pays for all of my gear. So anything I need, like it sounds silly, from your gloves to your boots to riding. Like we're riding in all weather, so you need some good waterproofs and good jackets and warm jackets. He provides me with all of my gear, and then he's, like I said, he's generous. So I get something on the side.
If you go back to the kind of journeyman jockey, he doesn't have a sponsor. He doesn't have any of that kind of stuff. He's got to finance himself and get his own petrol. And
it's like it reminds me of being an actor's life, being on an audition constantly. So go into the stable to kind of to ride. Did I do a good job today? Can I get onto the race on the weekend, kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
and also like actors go to auditions, they pay for their own train travel, and if they don't get the job, they don't get paid. But they've just paid 150 quid on a train to London. Do you know what I mean? So it's fascinating. So you obviously we had quite a good few name drops in this one actually. Of all the pods we've done, we've had Michael Owen and Alex Ferguson, and I think they're the top ones. Who else have you ridden for? Would some of our listeners would know, kind of like are quite famous? Have you ridden for any footballers or anything like that, or is Fergie the main one?
I got to think. Jeremy Kyle.
Okay, as in Jeremy Kyle, the ITV bloke.
Yeah, so he's owned the horses with Paul in the past.
Okay,
I think he still does. I can't remember. I've met Jeremy Kyle. It's hard to think now off the top of my head.
That's a random one, isn't it? You'd never put Jeremy Kyle in that show.
You'll meet him one day when he invites you onto the show again.
Can you imagine? No, but like that's great, because it is the world. A lot of people, like Alex Cuthbert's obviously got horses as well. Do you know what I mean? You haven't rode for Alex yet?
No, but my best mate Jackie rides mainly for Christian, who he has horses with. But yeah, I can't think off the top of the head, but there's an owner called JP McManus who's like massive in racing, who I'm quite fortunate. I've worn the colours for quite a few times and rode a few winners. He's probably, when you're a kid watching racing and racing, they're probably the colours you want to be putting on the most. I've put the Queen's colours on before as well in the past.
Does that work differently then? If you get an invite from the royal family to ride, would it come through your agent? Oh, they've asked you to do it. It's just a phone call. Oh, is it like a royal invitation or anything?
No. So I think I was just quite fortunate at the time, because normally jockeys ride for their certain trainers, and they're called spare rides. So I picked up a spare ride for Nicky Henderson. That was funny enough in the Queen's colours, and because I was quite a young hot jockey at the time, I was fortunate then to pick that ride up. So I got a picture in the colours and all that malarkey.
Did you do all right?
No, I didn't in the end.
So no royal invitation to the palace.
No, definitely not.
Okay, let's look quickly to Cheltenham then. There's, a tip each if you can for everyone listening. James, you come first.
Shouldn't
Come
ask
on.
bookies tips, should you?
Well,
So there's
come
a
on.
horse everyone thinks is going to win, and I think it's going to get beat. So it's Galopin de Champ in the Gold Cup. So it's the Blue Ribbon event. It's the big race on the Friday. This horse is obviously unbelievable. He won last year. He's been brilliant, but he ran around Christmas time. He was absolutely awesome. The next time he was not quite as good. And I just think, although he's a better horse than the rest in the field, I think he might have peaked. And I think that he won't win the Gold Cup on the Friday.
So what was the name again so everyone can hear it?
Galopin de Champ.
Deschamps, okay. Lorcan?
I don't know what he's on about, to be fair, with that one.
No, do you disagree completely?
Yeah.
Everyone says he's going to win, but
I think he'll win. There's a horse I'm riding in the mare's novice hurdle. She's called Golden Ace. I finished second on her in a grade 2 last year when she was a young horse, and she's developed and grown, and she's a lot stronger this year. She's won her 2 only starts over hurdles. She's in the mare's hurdle, so I think she's got a great chance.
She's about 8-1 for the mare's hurdle at the moment. You were talking earlier about the bumper where him and Tim had a disagreement.
Yeah.
So Tim fancied, who did Tim?
Tishan.
Tishan's 8-1, and your ride is 16-1. So yours is double the odds. So that's a bit of a-
I think I'm just going to follow you for Cheltenham. Is that okay?
That's right. Yeah, I've tipped before. I've tipped a good winner before. Yeah. I rode a winner in 3 years ago. Was it 3 years ago? Might have been. Okay. And he was quite big odds, but I remember doing a preview night and I tipped him. So
jockeys are notorious for being bad tipsters, though. Just
Are they?
the one. Lorcan might be different, but don't listen to jockeys.
He must know more than you. No
He knows more
offense.
than me. That's not saying a lot, is it?
Well, I'm going to back Lorcan all the way. Every single bet I'll have on horse racing, it'll be me. Do you know what? That's been fascinating. Thank you for coming in, Lorcan. It's really a nice little insight to the world you live in and kind of a world that we watch, but maybe don't know so much about behind the scenes. And James, as always, absolute pleasure, mate.
Thanks. Cheers,
And
guys.
happy birthday as well,
Oh,
James.
thanks.
yeah, happy birthday.
Okay, there we go. We'll be back next Monday here on the Sport in Wales podcast, and you can check us out on all our socials. Tell your friends about us and share the love, please. And we'll catch you next week. Wherever you go, wherever you are, enjoy your Sport in Wales week.
Sport in Wales podcast.
Supported by DragonBet.
Your go-to for Welsh sports news and views.